Hello, Jaime from Inky&Scrappy back with Life Gets Better Craft Roulette number 281. So I kind of started by pulling out some stuff. I'm planning on using the new La La Land August kit. It's a new to me kit, and I'm currently in love with the little Marci stamps, and so you might be seeing some more of them throughout. Anyways, I'm starting with a Simon Says Stamp background stamp. That's like stamp and stamp. Anyways, so it's just a coffee one. I don't know if it's currently in stock or available anymore or not, but it's basically like it gives you whatever your color paper is gonna shine through, and that's where your sentiment is. But I wanted it to kind of go with my coffee theme. So Craft Roulette this week for this week, I shouldn't say this week, but for challenge number 281 was a 4x6 card. And what were my colors? Coffee Isle colors, and From a Tree, and Out of Line. So those were the 4 parameters that I needed to hit. And so I may have saved some coffee bag because of the print on it. I know you know how you just find something and it's like, ooh, that's pretty, so you save it. Well, it's been sitting on my desk for a while, and I thought this was the perfect opportunity to use it. Coffee Isle? Yes, I have something directly from my coffee aisle. Perfect. Anyways, it actually came from the Philippines from my sister-in-law. So I looked up some Philippine coffee companies and found this teal and orange like on their bags. So some of their bags were black, some of them were teal and orange, like their logo. So that's kind of what I went with. For my color inspiration, of course, the new Lawn Fawn plaid worked well with that teal and orange color, and so I went with that one. Of course, I was kind of going for a fall themed card anyways, so therefore it just kind of worked, right? And so I actually used a close to my heart pattern, quote unquote, for this one. It's actually a 3x3 card pattern, and so I just extended it to make it work for my 4x6 card bases. I ended up doing 2. I wasn't planning on doing 2, but once I started, I was like, oh, I have extra pieces, and I thought it would be fun to kind of like switch every other one. And then I realized I didn't have enough to do them all in black, and so I had to, I worked from there. It's, kind of how we roll. So I had one that was skinnier, one that was the actual pattern from the coffee bag. I ended up using it. It kind of gets hidden. You don't even notice that it's like smaller. But these are cut at 3¼ inches wide by, I think, 3½ tall. So if that helps. Now for my coffee bag, it is, it's like that thicker foil, not really foil, but plasticky foil, right? And so I ended up using score style tape or scrapbook double-sided adhesive in this case to adhere all of those down to make them stick without any issues. It also helped to lay them flat because there's like bends and creases in them from the side of the bag. So I did that off camera because that took a little bit of time. I probably could have gone with a wider strip, but I liked the small ones on the edges because then it was just perfect sized. I didn't have the perfect size score tape for this one. So I'm just adding these on there. I'm trying to get them in a fairly straight line. I was not totally on top of my straight line, which was fine because Out of Line was, one of the parameters. Granted, I also tend to color outside the line sometimes, so that was where I was thinking my out of the line was going to go. But, I can have it on there twice. It works. So I'll adhere that last strip here. I start on both ends and then work my way in. It's easier to hide maybe a skinnier strip this way by making sure that you have kind of even spacing on the ends and then working your way in to kind of evenly space. So here is that new La La Land August kit. You can get the kit, you can only buy the kit, the stamps in the kit, the dies in the kit, I think for the first 6 months or something. I don't know, but it's a really good deal. So I ended up doing the full kit. I think you can do just the red rubber and the dyes, or you can just do the clear and the dyes maybe, but I liked both of them, so of course I went with both of them. It is at least a 3-month commitment, so if you know, but then you can get one, like starting the second month, you can add a past kit in for the same price kit wise, which is kind of nice. So I, have gotten my next kit, and this is my second kit. My first one was the shopping cart, right? That's why I got the shopping cart die. I like the girl too, but I've only used the shopping cart die in that one. Anyways, so I'm stamping this one out on some Xpress cardstock with some Lawn Fawn jet black ink. I will say I have been heat setting it. It is still not drying the greatest. Hit me up with some of those better options out there. I will probably end up going back to Mementos to see if it works. I also did a new color palette to go with Lawn Fawn's new 6x6 paper pad. Of course, that gorgeous plaid. So if you're interested in that one, I will put it up on my blog under the Ohuhu color blends tab. Hopefully I remember to do that this week. I'll probably also put it up on Instagram if you follow me there. So I started with the first one, and as you can see, it was not set. It like ran. I did heat set the second one a little bit better, a little bit longer, to make sure that it was actually heat set properly. So I may have started to get the Marci's because I liked the eyes on her coloring on this one. And I'm going to tell you this right now. The coloring on this one is extensive. I kept it slower. I wanted you to see a little bit more detail in the coloring. Coloring big items is something I need to work on personally. Coloring smaller images, it's a lot easier to get a blend. And so I wanted to push myself to maybe color some bigger images, especially people images, to get a little bit better at doing faces, doing eyes on this one. You will see I do a second one, so you get to see this one, and then I will color a second one, and you can compare the two. So if coloring is not your thing and you don't like watching it, go ahead and zoom ahead. I tell you I put a timestamp in here, but I probably won't pay that close of attention. So, just go ahead. We're probably looking at about 45 minutes of coloring that was cut down into about 15-ish minutes. Just watch and learn, I guess. I don't know. So I started with my darkest tone on the jeans, and then of course came in with my medium tone, and then I'm going to pull in a lighter tone. I didn't go all the way to the lightest one on this one. I usually keep it, or maybe I did. So I skipped one color in there because I didn't like the blend on it. And so sometimes that happens when I do my color charts. I don't particularly care for one color that might be in there. Or I'll be like, it might work on a smaller image because you can blend it a little bit better. And with larger images, sometimes it doesn't blend as good. So I know I kept out one of the greens. Do I remember which one I kept out? The one with the question mark, I think, is the one I kicked out. So I did the darkest green, the second to the bottom green, and then the lightest green is where I went. And kind of left out that bluey green. So keep that in mind. Let's see. And for this one, it was the first time for me coloring it in general, so trying to pick out what colors I wanted to go with, where I was going to color, how I was going to color. I try to lay down shadows where I think the shadows would go using the image on the actual stamp set, and you will see me with the next one how I really use that image. Using the image on the stamp set kind of helps you to see where other people felt that the shadows might be, or where those darker spots might be. And so kind of following what other people have done really helps me to learn a little bit more and, get some experience with some of those color blending or the highlights and the lowlights and those types of things. I also like coloring bigger images with the brush tips or the broad tip as opposed to the smaller nib. So keep that in mind as well, especially if you're looking at markers and which ones to get. If you're going to be coloring bigger items, I would probably go with the brush tip. But I've done both of them, and I've done fine with them. So just keep in mind depending upon what you like and or want to do. So for this one, I colored that little bottom part of the shirt a second color, thinking like an undershirt, right? Like usually under a sweatshirt I'll wear like a tank top, just because if I get hot I'm going to want to take my sweatshirt off. So that was kind of my thought with that one, and kind of going with another tone that was in my paper that also went well with the outfit, quote unquote, that she was wearing. So for hair, I'm coming in with the darker browns on this one. And so I just start with I think I started with my second darkest. Don't quote me on that one. These ones are kind of, I don't know how to put it. The darkest and the second darkest one are really close. And so depending upon if you go over it more than once or not, is which color is darker. And so I started with the one, and then when I went over with the other one, I felt like it was darker. So then I went over the whole thing with the second one, just to make sure I was darkening it all up. I like to go in with the smaller brush on this one, or the brush on, the fine nib on this one works fine, because I'm trying to go for streaky, hair. I want strands. I don't want it to be all one color. At least that was the technique I was going for on this one. You can definitely color it all one color. Go in with your lightest and work with that one, and then just come in and add blobs of darker in there. That works too, or like chunks of darker in there. It's going to look good either way, however you want to do it. Then I'm just coming in with my lighter tone here and kind of filling in the areas that I left white, which will kind of leave that highlight in the hair where, the light's hitting, or it gives it some movement and some shape. I didn't realize I was off camera for the coloring of the boots, but I kept it fairly simple. Just kind of hit the outsides, maybe the stitching and seams, and then came in with the lighter color and went over the whole thing to kind of blend it all together. Gives it a little bit of a round shape, but not, it wasn't too difficult. Those went pretty quickly. And then of course bringing in a gray for the heel on the one that is showing here. I don't even know if they end up showing up on the finished card because of how I had to cut it off. I did add some gray to the cap on the coffee here. And then of course, just coming in, I added like the lighter skin tone color on the cup to kind of give it some shade and definition. On the final finished card, I think I maybe even did it off camera, like once the card was done. I was like, it needs to be gray. So I brought in a really light gray and covered that up with some light gray. So I just was kind of playing with my marker there, or my pen there, to make sure that it had some good ink flow, and added some white to the center of the eyes. And that's when I realized, oh yeah, I bought the Marcis because I really wanted to learn how to do eyes, like how to make them look spectacular and big, and not just the little circle eyes. Granted, she looked perfectly fine with just the little circle eyes, right? Like that's totally fine. So instead I brought in that white gel pen and I drew in almond shaped eyes for her, and brought in the black gel pen here and kind of added that to that actual black eye, so it kind of gives it a shiny glossy look. And then waiting it for it to dry. As you see, I'm very patient. Waiting for it to dry with my hand quick, and then just tapping on a little bit of white onto the eye there to kind of give it some reflection, like it's reflecting the light, and going from there. So that was my first one, right? It turned out adorable. Now I really wanted to do the eyes, so I stamped it out again, and I'm bringing in just a regular drawing pencil to kind of draw in what I think I want for the eye shape. I am definitely using the pattern or the image on the actual stamp packaging to help guide me in this one. If I didn't have that, but there was a different, like somebody else had done it, I would definitely pull that up on my phone and zoom it in and see how they did the eyes, because that's how I learn, okay? I just learn by looking, watching, and doing myself. A lot of times I just do it and figure it out. That's kind of how I roll. But I did bring in colored pencils for this one. These are my cheap Crayola 24 count pencils, if you are wondering. They're sitting in my desk, and so I didn't have to go look for them. I might have like the 172 whatever expensive Prismacolor ones. the Crayola ones work just fine. Lack of me wanting to get off of, out of my, where I was at. I didn't want to have to get off of my chair and go and get them, which is funny because usually I stand. And so it's, anyways, I did erase my original kind of like light sketches there. And then I'm bringing in a black colored pencil and kind of bringing back in that undershadow of the eyelid. So it's basically when that eyelid is closed, or when it's open, you kind of have that darker tint in there. I will end up using that as my lash line. Later on, I'll bring in a darker pen and kind of hit that and make it look like eyelashes. But and then I brought in like the skin tone color and brought that around on the bottom, so it gives me that base for where I want my eyes to start and where I want the skin to come in. Now at this point, you're gonna see this and you're gonna be like, what were you doing? It looks like a hot mess. And I was like, oh, I should stop. Like, what am I doing? So I brought in a pink color for the cheek and a little bit for the nose, and it might have been a little bit darker than I had intended or planned, but the joy of alcohol markers is keep working it and it'll be okay. Like, keep pushing the color into the paper. It's gonna blend eventually. At least that was my hope on this one. I was just like looking at it, like I stopped and I was like, what did I do here? Because I was just like, oh my gosh, I ruined it, like with these really bright pink cheeks. But I thought, you know what? I'm going to just keep going. I know that it's going to work. I've done it before. It's just been a really long time. And when you're working with a larger area like that, sometimes getting that bigger hit of contrast really kind of helps give you some more depth and dimension to that face. And so that's what I did. I just kept working on it. I ultimately loved the finished product when it was done, and it turned out adorably cute. I did come back in with my black jelly pen here and added that back into that black eyes, and then letting it dry with my hand again. I was like, okay, I put the little white dot in the center, and then I was like, okay, I need to do something else for a little bit and then come back to it. So I'm started on the hair for this one. So I'm doing the hair on this one just a little bit differently, a little more controlled as opposed to the first one. So, when I said you can do the hair almost anyway and make it look pretty good, I wasn't fibbing. I've done it multiple ways and I've always loved the outlook. This one, I was definitely going for the coloring technique on the actual stamp packaging. It's a different style to me than what I'm used to. It's a little bit more blotchy, less actually blended. And I guess in real life, we tend to be more, if you look at stuff, I look at stuff that has shadow on it and how it lays, how it acts, color-wise. So look at your blankets when you're in the living, when you're, cozied up on the couch and you look at how the light plays on the blanket. Those types of things, kind of how you get your ebbs and your flows in the light and your dark colors. Yes, I forgot to color her ears and I didn't realize it until I had gotten, about to this point. And I was like, oh, I guess I will finish the hair and then I will come back and color the ears. So I'm bringing in my second color on this one, adding that in kind of like I did with the first one, and then I'm bringing in another tone here and just kind of adding that one in here and there. I think I ended up using 4 colors for my hair on this little girl. I don't know if she's a little girl. She's, probably a young adult. I don't know, hot mom, okay? We'll call her a MILF. So I did bring in like a brownish color for my final one. It kind of gives that undertone of brown in her hair. So she's kind of got a reddish brown hair look to her, and then I'll finish the ears off at this point. I just kind of kept it fairly simple with my skin tone on that one. Like I just used that one marker for the ears, just did it in layers to get that color to kind of go. I did bring in red for her lips again, and then I found my Stardust, I think it's the Stardust gel pen, which kind of just is an iridescent gel pen, of course, to put on top of her lips. So she kind of has that glossy shimmery lipstick or lip gloss tint maybe, I don't know. Anyways, so I'm adding that in now so you can see the beautiful shimmer and shine to them. And then coming in with that white on the eyes. So looking at the eyes, they kind of have the white spot, and then of course the reflections in your eyes. If you look at pictures of eyes, you'll kind of see those. That's kind of what I was going for. I loved how her hair and her eyes turned out on this one. It was definitely where I was going for this one ultimately. So for this one, again, on the coloring, I definitely followed the picture right next to me, right? So just kind of adding in those dark areas, not worrying about blending so much. I've tried to do this style in the past with, I don't know, less luck on a smaller image because, you know, your area is less, right? Where this one, I had a little bit more area to work with, and so I could make it work. I could also add texture onto this one where I couldn't really add texture onto some of the other things I've done with this one, which was kind of fun. Like the last one I did, so it was a smoother blend. This one, I wasn't worried about it being a smooth blend. I was fine with it being choppy and not as smooth as I normally go with those types of things, and so it just kind of worked. It worked well. Other than that, I don't know. It's just me coloring. I did want to keep this one slower just because it's a newer to me technique, and I wanted you to kind of see how it ended up coming together. So just kind of going with that second tone and kind of adding in another layer of color in there, adding on to the shadowy areas, maybe going a little bit darker in areas that I thought I wanted a little bit more darkness to, but I wasn't so worried about the blend on this one. And, you know, so if you worry about your blend or things not being as blended as you'd like, it's okay. There's other styles of coloring that look absolutely fantastic without all of the blending, or, you know, if your transition isn't the greatest. And this is really where having that color sketch or that color pattern kind of goes, because you get 3 or 4 colors that kind of go well together, and that's, you know, working with them that way, it kind of gives you this blotchier, less blended look. I don't want to say it's more realistic because I don't know if it's really realistic. It's just, I don't know, a different way of coloring. Okay. Yeah. I did do the pants similarly to what is on here. You will get to see the first color and I think the second color, and then my camera died. And I wasn't going to stop everything just to, because I have to unscrew the camera, take it off, open it up, switch out the battery. Then I have to put it back on, you know, screw it back on the peg. And then you know, it's a process. And so sometimes it takes longer, and I wanted to work wet on wet with my inks here. So I'm just bringing in that second color here, kind of adding that in, and then I just went over the whole thing with my lighter shade. You will see the end result in a little bit, I guess. Yeah, I thought I showed them, but I didn't. The joys of editing and me not remembering what I did 3 days ago when I edited it down. Yeah, it happens. So for the rest of my card, so this one has like a strip that was supposed to go over the middle. Do I like it? It works. I didn't like the big chunky that it was, so I do end up cutting it down a little bit. I'm coming in with VersaFine Vintage Sepia on this one. I went with the brown. I could have gone with the black. I guess it really didn't matter. Why did I go brown? It was the one that I ended up grabbing. Not that I meant to go with brown. I think it was one of those like, oh, well, I guess that's the color it's going to be, because that was the ink pad that I grabbed. That's how a lot of my cards come together. Let's be honest here. So I'm going to bring in my original one here and add that onto my card base. So kind of keeping it in the middle. Keep in mind if you like the layout, but you could definitely move this one up or down however you wanted to. I would just leave at least a peak of those little strips hanging out on the bottom or the top, depending if you go up or down. I might have, I don't remember if I did or not. I think I maybe did them both about the same. Anyways, you could definitely move it down a little bit and have it closer to her feet if you wanted to. I did bring in some foam tape here just to pop her up. You know, it's a fairly simple card design overall, so I kind of wanted to pop her up on it. And then I always add just a little bit of glue on top of it. It helps with my placement, so if I need to wiggle her around a little bit, I can usually do it without tearing anything. And then I did add 3 little coffee beans to the end for my from a tree, because coffee beans come from a tree. And then of course, I didn't make you watch the second one, but here is the 2 side-by-side comparison. The same exact stamp, they look totally different just because of how they're colored. And then of course, you know, different sentiment on the other one. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Have an amazing rest of your day. Bye.